Welcome to Doghouse Times, your source for dog and doghouse information. I'm pretty excited to talk to you today. On today's podcast, I'm going to be discussing the best doghouse solar projects. This goes right in line with the article that you can find on doghousetimes.com/great-dog-house-solar-projects, in case that wasn't long enough for you. Getting right to it, are you thinking of going green with some doghouse solar projects? It's always better than running an ugly extension cord across your yard, especially if you have a lawn that you need to mow. Solar is efficient, free energy, and there's lots of it to go around. So why not take full advantage for you and your pooch and make your doghouse really cool? I've scoured the net for the best doghouse solar ideas and the doghouse solar projects to bring them together in one place for you. And I'm going to share those exclusively with you here today. Let's take a dive into the beauty of solar with these great doghouse solar projects. In order to fully grasp the possibilities of what we can do with solar in our doghouses, we need to jump right into solar. I'm going to start by bringing it back to the basics. That way we can get an idea of what we can do. After all, you don't want to wind up needing a field of solar panels to power your doghouse disco, right? So let's start at the beginning and learn some basic principles first. Doghouse solar fundamentals. Solar systems are actually fairly basic electric circuits when we look at fundamentally how it works. Here's the basic concepts and steps of a typical solar system setup, or SSS. Number one, the sun rains down upon us with about 430 quintillion joules of energy at any given moment. That's 430 with 18 zeros. And that's according to the US Department of Energy. Some of this which will hit your solar panel. Number two, the solar photons are absorbed by individual photovoltaic cells that make up the solar panel. Number three, the photovoltaic cells send a direct current, so that's a DC charge, to the controller module. Step four, the controller sends electricity to a battery to charge it or to use its power. Step 5. A load is attached to the controller, such as a light or a fan or something along those lines. Step 6. You might also have an inverter connected to the battery, which will change the power from direct current, or DC, to alternating current, or AC. An inverter would be used when you have AC-powered devices as opposed to DC-powered devices. For example, your car uses DC current directly from your battery and alternator, which charges the battery. So, anything that you're plugging into your car's cigarette lighter port is going to be receiving a 12-volt DC charge. Your house, however, has circuits that run on AC power, not DC. The reason for this is that DC power loses power the greater the distance it must travel down a power line, whereas AC power does not lose nearly as much energy and thus makes more sense for a power grid than DC. Can you imagine if our power grids were DC, the power wouldn't make it to your house? That's the problem with DC. But DC is stronger, quote unquote, energy, and is therefore used when a circuit does not have to be concerned with a voltage drop. Let's talk for a minute about batteries or not to have batteries. When you're working out the details of your solar project, you will need to consider one very important aspect of your system. That is, will you want to have power at night or during overcast periods? If you do, then you will need to incorporate a battery into your solar system. Obviously, if you don't have a battery, then whatever load you put into the system will only run when the sun is beating down on the solar panel. This can make it difficult if your solar panel is supposed to be providing power to a heater. I think it makes sense to include a battery into your setup. Adding a battery will accommodate those times when the sun is low, but you still want power. The purpose of your solar design will determine if the battery is truly required. For example, if you want to have some nice lighting around or in your doghouse that will light up at night, then you absolutely need to have a battery to do that. Batteries can be consumed over time and will eventually need to be replaced. This is the downside to having a battery as part of your solar setup. Again, it really depends on your intention and how your project will function. But enough of the dry, boring part of solar. Now that we've had a little bit of a taste of how it works, let's jump into some cool and even hot ideas. One of the first ideas, which I think is a pretty good one, especially for the summertime, is one of the most common and useful solar ideas, which I came across, is utilizing solar to power a fan to keep air moving in the doghouse. There are a variety of small fans on the market that seem to have some mixed reviews. A lot of them look like nothing more than a small computer fan connected to a small, cheap-looking solar panel. Well, I have a better idea. How about picking up an attic fan? I found some really cool solar-powered attic fans at the hardware store that I think will really look cool, and they don't seem to have some bad reviews either. They're a little bit pricey compared to the smaller things that you find online that claim to be exclusively for doghouses. But I believe the reviews, like the real reviews, not the ones that some company paid a room full of people to just pound out good reviews. I mean the real reviews. And all the cheap little fans that run on solar that I found have pretty bad reviews. A lot of people complain about the fans not running well unless the sun is in full bloom, so to speak. So picking up one of these solar fans that's meant to be for your attic, so it goes on your house, so of course the things are going to work way better and last way longer than some cheap thing for a doghouse. The other thought I had about these is that they appear to be relatively cheaply made with regards to those little cheap fans. So getting something that's a little bit better quality, maybe for a different purpose, like these attic fans, if you try to look at it sideways, that might be the best way. But you do get what you pay for. Why would you spend $20 on something that won't work well and will likely break? It makes no sense to me to look at a product that's intended, it makes more sense to me to look at a product that's intended for a more reliable purpose. That's why I believe the solar-powered attic fan is a really cool idea, no pun intended. The fan is, after all, intended to be used on your home roof. Therefore, it's designed for longevity, aesthetic appeal, and of course, functionality, all in mind. People would get pretty upset if they installed a solar attic fan onto their roof of their home to have it leak or not work after a short time. The companies selling these would be in a lot of trouble. That's why I say go for the gold and get the right thing. After all, you get what you pay for, right? Now, another thing we could, power with a solar setup is, of course, an air conditioner. And that's really what you're going to need if you live in a really hot climate and you want your dog to be able to, get some rest in the doghouse when it's scorching hot. You might need to throw an air conditioner on there. But they are going to use a lot of power. So unless you have a lot of like the whole roof and maybe a couple extra panels, you might not have enough. However, I did find an air conditioning unit that uses water. And of course, it doesn't use as much energy. It's a 12 volt, so it'll work fine for a solar setup. But the problem with any sort of water powered air conditioner is that you have to refill the water like a lot. So I don't know if that's such a great idea. 2 solar panels on the roof, and you're going to have enough power to run the air conditioner according to, you know, basic roof size in most panels. But you might not be able to run more than that, other than maybe a little bit of lighting if you're lucky. The reviews of both the solar panels that I found in the air cooler seem pretty solid. And I've got some links on the website, doghousetimes.com, if you want to go check those out. But moving along to some other ideas that you could use solar-powered heat, the next thing that I researched setting up was a solar heating pad. This is, of course, for the inside of the doghouse to keep the dog warm during cooler times. And I found this 9-inch by 12-inch heating pad that's actually intended for rabbits, which state right on the box that it uses 25 watts of energy. Again, this is well within the range for a small solar panel like the one that I mentioned earlier. I did look into other types of heaters, like the ones you might buy for your desk at work or something, or for a small room. But the issue with those is that not only do they draw too much power, but they can get really hot, like up close, and they're not intended to be up close. So if your dog is sitting right up next to the heater, they could actually get burned. So I would probably steer clear of those and stick with something like the Rabbit Nest Box heater that's intended for use with an animal. Then there's, of course, you know, other heating pads, and the solution here is definitely, you know, I think is going the route of a heating pad, which uses much less power. Like I said, that is if it's intended to be used for an animal that might chew on something. I know the rabbits love to chew on stuff, so they usually, the heaters for those, the heating pads for those generally will have like a wire coil right around the power cord to protect it. So something like that is a great idea if you're going to use that for your dog, because you don't want your dog chewing on that cord, of course. And the pad, even, you know, this pad that I was looking at even has more protection. The only issue I found is that the pads that I found are 120 volts AC compared to the 24 volt, you know, DC, which is a little bit of an easier setup. Because remember, those solar panels, they're usually pumping out 12 volt DC or 9 volt DC or some sort of DC. Either way, my point is that they're pumping out DC. So if you want to use one of these cool pads that runs 120 volts AC, you're going to need to get the inverter and get that sorted out. Okay, so let's talk about inverters for a minute. They are easy to find. They are not hard to find. I went over to a local store that's sort of a department store slash hardware-ish sort of store, and they have inverters and solar kits, I think for like $160 Canadian. So the point is that they are not that hard to find. I know you can find them in automotive stores for use in cars, an inverter that changes the 12 DC to 120 volt AC so that you can plug in something that you would normally plug into your house and you can plug it into your car. I found one that was only $50, but also, you know, 400 watts and even has USB charging ports. So like I said, it's easy to find. Now, I know it's not likely your dog is going to need to charge a phone, but you can get some little fans that run on USB. USB offers a few interesting little devices like that, lights as well. So you could actually, you know, hey, technically you could hang out in your yard and plug your phone into your doghouse to charge it while you're hanging out in the yard. That'd be pretty cool. Your neighbors would be like, hey, I want one of those. You know, that'd be neat. I think it'd be really neat to have a USB power source. And like I said, fans or lights for your doghouse can run off USB, so it might not be a bad idea to look into that. Let's talk a bit about some water, because I believe, you know, at this point, you got to be primed for doing things 12 volt. I mean, it's going to be so much easier, unless you, of course, have the inverter, like I said. But how about running something really cool, like a little running waterfall or drinking fountain just outside? I was searching around for ideas and came across a picture of an old mill on the river's edge. And it kind of led me to think, what if I had like a small goldfish pond and a waterfall on one side of the doghouse? You know, now I'm getting into kind of like, I'm talking some landscaping in your yard that's sort of focusing around the doghouse. You know, you could have the doghouse and you have this little koi pond beside it. Put a little fence up so your dog doesn't act like an idiot and jump in. But, you know, you could have this little koi pond and have a little a waterfall or something. You could literally have that powered by the solar power coming off of the roof of the doghouse. You could have a little extension off of the back where the inverter and battery goes. If you're, you know, going to go that route, hide it right on the back of the doghouse. It'd be fantastic. The best concept, I think, in terms of water pumps at least, if you were going to go the route of having a little pond or a waterfall of some kind, is to utilize a marine water pump. Okay, like you might have on like a small boat or something for using to bail out the boat. They're typically 12 volt DC, because just like your car, boats also run on the same sort of battery as your car does. So typically anything electrical on a boat's going to be 12 volt DC. And again, you can always use a little inverter or whatever if you feel the need. I found a pretty decent little marine water pump online, meant for a little boat, and I think it was $30. You can find them between $30 and $50, and that's not going to break the bank. And that water pump uses 35 watts of energy. So if my math is correct, let me double check here. So I'll double check the math, and yeah, we're good. A 50 watt solar panel is easily going to power a 35 watt pump. So you could have a 50 watt solar panel powering a 35 watt pump, and, you know, say 5 more watts of lighting for some LED lights around the doghouse, and you still got 10 watts to spare that's going to charge up your battery for night use. So perfect. Speaking of night moves, I'm not certain how long the pump would run off of a car battery at nighttime, for example, when the panel isn't producing any energy. So that's really, you know, what's going to come into play there is what kind of battery or even batteries. You know, maybe you have a couple of panels and you've got 2 or 3 batteries hooked up. Who knows? So that's going to depend upon that, you know, how long it's going to go. Or you could also consider installing a timer. You throw a timer on there and it could, you know, potentially turn the thing off in the evening, and just have the lights on, or maybe turn the lights on in the evening and turn the waterfall off, or who knows, maybe you could even have some underwater lights that turn on at night as well, and have those on a timer so you're not using up energy during the day. I think adding some lights is one of the more obvious projects to add a level of awesomeness to your doghouse. As we're talking about solar power being the source of energy, I recommend, again, that we look at LED lighting. And of course, this is going to be the easiest way is to look at the LED strip lighting meant for cars, because it is going to be 12 volt again. And anything that's any kind of lighting for your car is going to be running at 12 volt. So it's really easy to not have to worry about getting, you know, a crazy inverter. Not that they're that expensive, in all honesty. And a lot of the time the controllers have them built in, but I'm just saying, you pick up a relatively cheap solar kit that has the module. If it doesn't come with an inverter, if you're getting 12 volt everything else, then who cares, right? Use a car battery, you're good to go. Just make sure you follow all the directions. Don't electrocute yourself. Don't start a fire, burn your doghouse down. So make sure you follow any directions you get on any solar kits, of course. Or you can always email me at doghousetimes@gmail.com. Is that what Gmail is? You can always send me an email. I'll help you out. I will totally walk you through any solar project having to do with doghouses, just because I'm just that nice of a guy. Anyway, getting back to the LED lights, I did find some really cool 12-volt LED light strips. And again, they're intended for cars. I picked a couple up, and I've actually wired them up, and they work really good. I'm going to be making a video about that, about using solar on your doghouse, so don't you fret. That's all coming. I just got to edit the stuff. So anyway, this would work great, again, for a solar project using any kind of these LED lights. Then, of course, you can talk about other kinds of lighting. We could get fancy with some exterior spotlights. You could add a few with some hidden wires or something that could, you know, shine on your doghouse. Maybe they focus on the water or food dish, got a little patio on the doghouse where your dog hangs out, have a couple of lights on the corners of that or something. Or maybe you mount them on the side of your doghouse, you know, focusing on some planted gardening or even that little koi pond or something that you could put beside it. There's all kinds of cool ideas you can do here. One of the other things I really like is the under fascia mounted lighting. That's that lighting that goes underneath that part of your roof that kind of overhangs. And if you hide the lighting kind of up in it so you can't really see the lights, but they, you know, shine that lighting down towards the ground along the walls of the doghouse, it can give a really cool lighting effect. Make it look like the walls of your doghouse are, you know, lit up blue or red or yellow or whatever the color is of the LED, right? So if you have changing LEDs that change color, even cooler. Then, of course, there's spot, deck, and floor lighting. I did some lighting like this on the gazebo that I built in my backyard. Recessed the lights into the wood along the bar. It looks absolutely awesome. So I am, of course, 100% a fan of doing this. Of course, if you're going to do this, you're going to want to, again, if you're using your solar to power it, which, of course, this is what we're talking about, then getting your LED lighting at 12 volt is always a good idea. Now, another thing you could do, if we're going to get into some really cool stuff, is adding automation to your doghouse. So let's talk about this for a second. What the heck am I talking about automated doghouse? So let's say you've got a strip curtain door, which of course I did a video on making your own strip curtain doghouse door, and you can find that at doghousetimes.com or on my YouTube channel. Go check it out. It's interesting, you know. I built one of these. It's real easy to make. I did a double layer strip curtain, but anyways, okay, I'm getting off topic. Making your automated strip curtain door. Let's say you make your strip curtain, you've got it on a little track, and then you could attach something like a linear actuator, which of course I picked one up. It's got a 10-inch throw, so it moves. It's like a piston. Okay, so it's like this little electric piston, and it moves in and out 10 inches. And it moves relatively slowly, but it's kind of neat because it gives this little hum sound. You know, like, have you ever seen that Star Trek show and those doors that whoosh, open or closed? You could literally do this with some solar power. You set up your little solar setup. You have one of these linear actuators set up on the doghouse front, holding the door perhaps, or this little strip curtain door even, and then you could have a sensor, like a photovoltaic sensor, excuse me, that's the wrong word. The word I was looking for there is retroreflective, which of course I use in the door business all the time for safety devices, but you can find little sensors like that at various electronic shops relatively cheap. So you could have a little sensor so that your dog walks up. Maybe you've got a little porch on the front of the doghouse, and the dog walks up onto the porch, crosses the beam of the sensor, that trips your circuit to move the linear actuator, and whoosh, the door to the doghouse opens right as the dog makes its way to the door. How cool would that be? Now these are like, you know, we're talking extreme cool solar projects for your doghouse, and you know, doghouse solar projects can not only add that immensely cool look and feel to your doghouse, but they're also a really fun project, especially if you have kids, to teach your kids about, you know, the use of solar energy. Solar kits are pretty cheap these days. It's a great project for your doghouse. That project is awesome for saving the environment too. And you can always brag to your friends about your green doghouse, and it'll just feel great, building a project like this. A solar doghouse project is an awesome way to bring your doghouse into the future. I really hope that you've enjoyed this podcast, and thank you for joining me here today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and don't forget to come visit me over at doghousetimes.com. Stay tuned. Come back next week. Arrivederci. Talk to you later. So long.